Yesterday, we talked about the correct leg position and had a picture at the end of it showing Kamari going over a jump, and her leg was correctly down under her. I thought we might ought to go through the rest of the body and give some helps as to how to get it correct. Remember a long time ago, or that I talked about being able to do nothing on a horse and being quiet and still. Uh, the Coming up the leg, the knees are in snug against the saddle. Okay, the leg hangs down from the knee. It doesn't necessarily touch the horse all the way because the leg isn't bent that way unless you happen to be bow-legged. And there are some people whose leg fits rather nicely on a horse because they are bow-legged. But that's the rare case, not the normal. So the weight goes into the heel. The knees are snug in the saddle. The seat should be soft and relaxed in the saddle, or better than saying in the saddle, say on the saddle. It should touch, but it should be very light because when you're jumping, the seat comes up out of the saddle. The back should be nice and straight. Remember, I talked about picking up the back of the head. That straightens the spine. That's the neutral position, okay? And so you want to learn to ride in the neutral position. The arms just hang naturally down to the side with the elbows even with the body or slightly in front. The hands, the arms, from the elbow to the horse's mouth should be a straight line for the most part, unless you're doing something. In other words, when everything is going right and you're just riding forward, you have a straight line from your elbow to the horse's mouth along the rein. That's true of the hands should be apart just a little bit at the withers to make that a straight line, not broken in with the hands on the withers or at the neck. The head should be erect, should be setting on straight. Just think about your head. It's almost the size of a bowling ball, and you put it on a 6-inch stem, and so that when you move the head, it has a lot of effect in what the body does. The chest should be up and relaxed, okay? So that you have really good posture. I see a lot of riders sitting slouched over, and that is a very poor position to be able to control the horse to the highest degree that you can. And you'd like for this horse to be able to operate and you be able to become a part of the horse. You should be able to feel where the horse is underneath you. One of the exercises that I used to do is have a rider sitting there walking the horse, and they're to tell me when one of the hind feet touch the ground, as it touches the ground, because really you want to be in control of the rear end of the horse from side to side, and you can't do that unless you know where the horse is under you. So if you practice calling as to when that foot is touching the ground, and then you can look off and look down to check yourself, or you have someone, a ground person, to help you. The ground person can be very valuable because they can tell you what they see, and then you as the rider have to interpret that to know what you should do. And so the ground person can, if they have the knowledge, can tell you what you can do. But as a rider, if you just have someone that can tell you what they're seeing, then you should be able to make that difference. Now, anything away from that basic position is to be doing something. And it doesn't matter if one hand goes up in the air for some reason. If there's a reason to have it up there, if the horse, for instance, is putting his head too low to lift the hand up forward, that's just a correction. And so don't worry about being in that one quote unquote perfect position all the time because it's a changing dynamic. It's moving all the time and changing as you go. So the next aid that we're going to talk about are our eyes. I talked about where the head is. If you're jumping a jump and your next jump is off to the left, as you come off of the ground, once you leave the ground for the jump, that jump is done. You can let the eyes go to your next fence because your natural, again, your body will tend to tell the horse, If you turn your eyes, your seat will pivot, rotate in that direction. And so your eyes are a tremendous aid when you're jumping or when you're riding dressage. If you're riding dressage and you're doing a shoulder in down a wall, the eyes don't watch the horse. The eyes look where you're going. Okay? And your body will help the horse get there. And so that the eyes are important. The next aid that you have when you're riding, and the last one really, is your voice. Horses respond very well to voice. Remember, I talked about a horse can learn about on the same level as a 5-year-old child that doesn't have a vocabulary or a spoken vocabulary. The horse doesn't have the spoken vocabulary, but he certainly has a vocabulary. The horse's ears, the horse's movement, the bend of his body, the swishing of his tail, all tells you something about the horse and what he's feeling or what he's wanting to do. As a judge, when you're standing out in the middle, you can tell if a horse is being irritated by those two signals. The ears, if he's being irritated, the ears are laid back. Okay? If he's just working and he's listening, the ears go back and forth. Okay? If he's ignoring you, they're going to be forward. The tail tells how the rider is sitting. You can look at a tail and tell whether a rider is camped off to one side or not, because the tail will camp off too. So those are some of the things that you need to be conscious of when you're riding a horse. Anything else that you use, whether it be a rein, whether you're using spurs, whether you're using a dressage whip, those are all aids that should only be used to do a certain thing. You don't all the time peck a horse with a whip just to keep his attention. If you want him to maintain an even walk, you put him at the walk, and then you get quiet. And when he changes, you tell him, no, I want that walk again. Whether if he's going too fast, then the hands can bring him back. So can the seat. Now, when you get to the point that you're jumping, we ride in what we call a 3-point, which means our weight's in our heels, our knees are on the saddle, and we drop our body forward and rotate at the pelvis. Okay, you rotate at the hip so that you tip the body forward. Again, that's the neutral position when a horse is cantering. If you have a problem with a horse, you can go behind the motion and push him forward, or you can go in front of the motion to slow him down. Think about when you get on a horse and you're cantering along at what the motion wants to do with you. If you're all the time falling back and pulling on the reins, you're not going to get a good performance. Okay? So, but if you're riding forward with the hips tipped forward, and a horse comes down to a fence and you can see there's a problem and he needs pushing, you don't have to move the body back. All you have to do is rotate that hip so that the seat bones go down on the horse, and all of a sudden you have put the horse out in front of you so that you can urge him on. Okay? By and large, we want to be neutral. We want to have him to come down to the fence. The horse should adjust himself, for the most part, at the lower levels of riding, if you will. When you get to Grand Prix jumping, we've got a whole new ball game, because then you're telling the horse where to be in front of the fence and when to leave the ground and all of that. He's much more attuned. I like for an open jumper to be at least third level dressage. He needs to have flying lead changes. He needs to be able to move laterally from a leg. He needs to be able to move forward and back elastically. And so a third level horse is fairly elastic in his horizontal movements and in his lateral movements. You want that elasticity. One of the things I would caution you about, if you have a horse, for instance, that wants to stay bent to the left. I was teaching a clinic one time, and a lady had a horse that was perpetually bent to the left. I showed her how to correct that. And so during that clinic, she was riding straight. I came back for a clinic 3 weeks later. Now she had a horse perpetually bent to the right. She had overdone the training. If there's a question of how much to do less. Interesting story. When I was going to Ricks College, I went and spent some time with the Horn brothers up in Iowa. They were the leading reining horse champions in the quarter horse world that year. And their system of working a horse was really unique. I'll give it to the next one because we're getting a little long, but I'll do another one on how their training technique, because it's valid for all kinds of training. Remember to subscribe and give me a little accolade. Send me a comment. Send me questions. Love to have some of those. Have a wonderful day.